My name is Zach Gardner, and I'm the Chief Architect at Keyhole Software. And about 3 to 4 months ago, I set off on a little bit of a journey. I wanted to find people that were thinking about generative AI as much, if potentially more, than what I was thinking about. I scoured the internet, I went through all the cobwebs, and I was able to find some really, really interesting people to share their insights, share their lessons learned, and to share a little bit more about the work that they're doing in the field. With me today is Charlene Li, who's a New York Times bestselling author. She has 10 times, maybe 100 times the amount of followers I have on LinkedIn. Super, super jealous. Charlene, thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you for having me, Zach.
So, to get us started with, I do have to always put my disclaimer in. All the views and opinions expressed in this program are the views and opinions of the participants and do not reflect their employers nor any trade organizations they're affiliated with. And now that we've said that, maybe talk a little bit first about, like your background. I see you have a Harvard diploma on the wall. Again, super jealous. Let's just start there. We'll see how this goes.
So tell me about myself. Okay. Well, I am living in San Francisco in the middle of Silicon Valley. And I started being interested in technology from an early age and just played with it. Whatever gadget I could get my hands on. I was lucky that my dad was a bit of a technophile too, as well. And then when I came out of business school, I could see that the internet was going to be a pretty big deal. This was back in 1993. So I went to the San Jose Mercury News. And nobody goes into newspapers, period, out of business school. But I went there because I could see that newspapers would be disrupted. And I wanted to be at the front end of disruption. And I've made an entire career based on just following one disruption to the other. So put newspapers up online and then became a Forrester analyst where I covered internet advertising during the dot-com boom. I looked at search engine marketing and search engines, so covered Google's IPO and the rise of search and portals, and then started blogging in 2004 and wrote my first book called Groundswell in 2008. So I keep following the trends, writing books about it, talking about it, and I just get tremendous joy in explaining all these crazy new technologies to people and helping them adopt it and use it well to maximize, again, potential for the organizations, but especially for the people in the organizations and in our society.
Very cool. Very cool. You've definitely been blogging also a little bit more than I was. I think I was probably still playing Pokemon with my high school buddies in 2004. Not the best use of my time, but it was certainly a blast. So to get us started off with, maybe talk to me first about, you kind of go out, you talk to a lot of different companies, you get a lot of different insights from people. I'm curious, what are some of maybe the common themes or common trends that you're seeing with companies that are trying to adopt generative AI at scale and are just struggling and just trying to figure out like how to wrap their arms around this new technology, this very, as you said, it disruptive technology.
Yeah, again, I've been in this space for so long, and I have never seen something as disruptive as this because it is fast, it is the scale, and especially inside of organizations, it is across the entire organization. It's hitting every single function. And that's very different from any other digital transformational technology. In the past, as a CIO, as a CEO, you had the luxury of saying, so, how quickly do I want to digitally transform? And I'll do it only in this department, like in marketing. And then when HR is ready, we'll go do that. With generative AI, it's all hitting us all at the same time because anybody with a web browser can use it. And so the speed, the adoption, and especially the rate at which it's changing, it's hard to wrap your mind around just what can it do and what can't it do. So while there's tremendous benefits, there's also tremendous amount of uncertainty and risk. And that drives leaders absolutely bonkers. Because how do I put a strategy together when it's just going to be obsolete the next day? And yet at the same time, I know I need to have one, but where do I start? There's just so many places. And it's unclear. I hear from them over and over again. What's the ROI on this? If I invest in this, what am I going to get out of it? Is it too early for us to be in this space? Are we taking on too much risk? Should we just wait until things settle down? Or are we going to get left behind? So a lot of the focus right now is on how the technology works versus how can we actually use it to create value for our customers and for our employees.
Mhm. I mean, I have in these journeys that I've done talked to people that are talking about, how do we use it to increase revenue, but also be able to decrease operational costs and to be able to give them a competitive advantage. It's really interesting that you said, it is very cross-functional. Like when I think of, practical applications, like one use case would be the company handbook. Everyone has one. Nobody reads them except for us at Keyhole, because I do, I'm a nerd like that. But being able to have maybe like a chat bot that can say, hey, I've got this really weird scenario going on. What are some of the places in the company handbook that I should be referencing? Or for very, very large organizations that have tons of different policies, both on how workplace conduct should be, take place, as well as from like a technology side. Like I, as a technologist, have so many different documents out there that govern what kind of architectures I can use, what kind of security policies I have to put in place. Being able to just ask a chatbot, not necessarily to give me the right answer, but to then where are the pieces, where are the source materials that I should be looking at? Um, I have seen companies like Walmart do this for their own internal client base. They have just a wealth of information, like a treasure trove, sort of a lost library of Alexandria, if I remember right, of just documents sitting out there, and no one could use them. So I'm definitely concurring on the fact that it is cross-functional. It is going to affect, every piece of an organization that I maybe since the internet, that's probably about the only other thing I can really think of that's just affected us at such a large scale.
Right, right. And the difference is with the internet, it came onto our consciousness and its development pretty slowly. I mean, we had a lot of time before we really needed to do something significant. And initially it was a storefront. And then later on, you got more tools for internal. I mean, it was a slow roll. Generative AI is here. It's here right now. And you can use it and you can use it across the board. And so when people say, what are the use cases? There are thousands of use cases, not just hundreds, thousands and thousands of use cases now. And the question becomes, oh, how do I pick and choose? How do I prioritize? And again, how do I do this when everything is changing? So am I investing in a chatbot that 3 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now is going to be obsolete? Is that investment just going to be a waste? Am I taking on risk in terms of privacy and data that I don't know about because the regulations haven't been put in place yet? So that uncertainty is really messing with our minds. And I just finished a strategy session with somebody just before this, and the organization is like, we have all these initiatives. Which one's the most important? Where should we focus? How do we put together a plan of how generative AI is going to impact our business? I mean, we've never done something like this at this speed and scale and uncertainty. So how do we leverage that?
Mhm.
And so we worked through a process, and I can go into that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, no, actually, that's a great topic because I keep going because I'm writing things down. I hope we don't go over the time limit. I hope I don't crash my computer for how long I'm going to be recording. But no, no, start. What were some of the recommendations? Anything that you can help give people that are listening to this a better frame of reference to even know just how to even conceptualize of this change.
Yes, if you start with, let's put our handbook in a chatbot, you'll be starting from the wrong direction because that's one use case. How do you know that's going to be the most impactful? So you
Hmm.
go back to your strategy, you go back to your values, you go back to the foundational things that are not going to change. And the reason I talk about values and purpose and things like that is you need to have an ethical and responsible use of AI framework because questions will come up. I guarantee you questions came up in that session. Like, should we be doing this or that? And I go, well, what does your framework inform you? And you'll be able to answer those questions. But if you don't have them, you'll be lost. So start with those things, but also start with your business strategy, your sources of competitive advantage. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Because if whatever you're trying to do doesn't help you achieve your basic, most important strategic goals, you're not going to spend time on it. It's not going to be important. So make sure these things matter. And the bigger and the more audacious they are, the better. It doesn't mean you have to tackle the big things, but knowing this is where you want to end up some period of time in the future. This is the vision, how we can see generative AI making a big difference in allowing us to reach our goals and building up our competitive advantage. Then we can take the steps initially here today to start building for that. But if you're just sitting here without that context, you're just kind of just wandering around the room hoping that you bump into a strategy. You're much better off starting with the strategy that you already have and saying, how can generative AI support that, accelerate that, take away and mitigate risks and threats? And that is a coherent strategy and that you can take to your board, take to your investors, take to your employees, take to your customers, and say, this is what we're going to do.
Mhm. No, I dig that. I know a mutual acquaintance of ours, Dan Savino, who actually interviewed for this video cast, came up with a very similar strategy too. You're looking at your business model, you're figuring out what it is that you do better than your competitors, and you're looking at contextually, this is where my organization is at. These are the things that I value. This is my strategy. What are the areas that I can sort of piece off that things that human beings like you and I, like we do a lot of really good things. Like we go to school, we produce work, but we're not good at, doing math problems of, what is like 10 million divided by 400 million times, that's not something that we're good at. So the pieces that you can use generative AI to do that are really, really effective are things that complement the people that you already have. You already have a large number of employees, you already have a good company culture. And what are the things that maybe the busy work that people are doing, which in isolation may not seem such a big deal. But if you look at it really from a broader perspective in the aggregate, if someone takes 5 minutes to do a task and they're doing that task every single hour, multiply that by the number of employees that you have in an organization, you're not fundamentally changing the the manner in which you're doing work. You're optimizing for the most precious resource of all, time. This is the one true scarce commodity. So I like that framework. We're still grappling with that, honestly, from a development side. The NIST, the National Institute of Science and Technology, had a webinar that I'm doing an informative session on because it was like 3 hours long. It was really hard to sit through a 3 hour webinar, but we're still trying to figure out just how we as software developers grapple with doing generative AI at scale. But I really like your advice of just like really think about it from not very myopically of just a single use case, but like where as a company we want to be using this, and then that illuminates, that helps give light to where you should be using this at an individual level. So very, very good advice.
And to your point, Zach, it's great to find those productivity gains. Absolutely. I mean, those are no-brainers. And I would add that the real opportunity is how do you create value for your customers and your clients? Because when you look at those opportunities that generative AI creates, it is a whole different scale of impact to your organization. I'm saying do the productivity, do the operational efficiencies. Those will come. And the more you can democratize the access of generative AI to people who will actually use it, they don't have to be told. They will figure out the ways and they can share the best practices amongst each other. The more you can create that kind of shared experimentation and learning in this fast moving space and just push it down into the organization, the faster you're going to realize those productivity gains. But those operational, those revenue opportunities, the customer value creation opportunities, those need to be strategically looked at because they require you thinking about your offering, thinking about probably more engaged and more integrated use of your data with generative AI. And that requires more of a strategic plan. Access to data sources, strategic moves, positioning against competitors. Those are strategic moves that need that focus and attention from the C-suite in order to be able to optimize those. And you won't get that focus unless you're looking at it from that strategic lens.
Agreed, agreed. Kind of one of the things that you touched on a little bit ago that I had written down, there's the speed of change that we're looking at is unlike anything else. And if I were to put myself in the shoes of a CIO or a CTO, trying to think strategically about how do I implement this, there's definitely a lot of uncertainties that I have in terms of, litigation. Right now, the New York Times, at least as of this recording, like the New York Times is currently suing OpenAI for training their models against copywritten data, copywritten text that the Times has without, properly reimbursing them for that. There's legislation that people are still working on. From a federal level, the Biden administration put out an executive order back in October, if I remember right, on the ethical, responsible, and safe uses of generative AI. And they're still trying to figure out how to wrap their minds around this. And just the fact that we have such a fundamental shift in the tech landscape, like the U.S. federal government is good at a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, and large companies are really good at a lot of things. Moving quickly is usually not one of those things. So, are there any recommendations you would give in terms of, how to prioritize this relative to, just continuing the day-to-day operations, all the other investments that they have? Like what would be like a really good and compelling pitch for someone to say, like, if you're going to outpace your competitors, if you want to stay competitive, like you're going to have to do this. Pretend, I was the CEO of a fictitious guy. Like, sell me on this. I want to know. I want to hear.
Well, if you want to create growth without having to spend a huge amount of money, without having to add people and do it in a minuscule amount of time, this is the time to do it. We've never had an opportunity like this. So do you want to waste it? Or do you want to take a look?
That's
Let's
true.
go take a look.
Mhm.
And so I can understand if you decide not to do this, not to use generative AI to whatever, just focus on productivity gains and not look at the opportunities out there. But I want that to be a choice. I want that to be an intentional choice that you say, I have these other priorities that are more important than looking at these brand new opportunities that never have existed before. So you may be going through a M&A, there may be a whole bunch of other things that may be more important, completely understand, but make it an intentional choice and strategy not to pursue it. Ignorance is not a strategy.
Mhm.
So, and I feel like we're oftentimes operating from a point of ignorance, and it's because our leaders do not know how to use these technologies. They have not used it directly. They have not seen the impact. They think it's to rewrite songs in a certain voice or something like that. They haven't seen it applied to real business problems and opportunities. And so there's no substitute to getting your hands dirty, to getting educated as the leaders of your organization. So if there's any priority, and I try to get people hands on to use this to address real business problems that they have today as an executive. And then the light bulbs start going off like, oh, I get it now. For me to understand these customers, to apply it to a particular offering that we have, we see the possibilities. Never thought we could do this. And it's as if you see a completely different world unfolding in front of you. And when you see that, it's really hard to stop it then. Once
Mhm.
you see it, you just want to be in it. And then it's a question of how do you craft that vision and the execution plan against that?
Mhm. No, I mean, at the end of the day, it is another tool. The internet was a tool. Uh, Cars are a tool. I mean, granted, there are some people that are crazy about their cars, just as there are some people that are crazy about the internet. But like, it is always a means to an end. So I really like your perspective of trying to think about it from like the customer's point of view, like the end user's point of view. One of the really compelling use cases that I have come across in these webinars with respect to healthcare is it's called ambient documentation. So if you imagine you're a surgeon in the operating room, your head's down, you're talking with your team, you're describing what's going on, you're asking for a scalpel, you're asking for some forceps. I don't know what doctors actually use, I'm not a doctor, but I imagine that they use these kind of terms, how many cc's of whatever. And after they're done, they would have to go and write a whole note about everything that happened during the surgery. Wouldn't it be better if instead you had a couple mics placed around the operating room that were constantly capturing the audio of what the surgeon and the rest of the team was describing? You had a audio to text large language model that was then able to synthesize all the conversation that happened and then present the document to the physician for them to make any last edits that they wanted to. Maybe it wasn't able to pick up on some certain words because they had a mask on. Maybe it wasn't great at that. But how much time would that save healthcare companies? Doctors ain't cheap, and you're going to be paying them to just write a note? Like, no, like that seems silly. So I'm curious if there's any other, any other news articles that you've read about really other compelling use cases for it, or maybe what are some of the use cases that, are kind of in your head that people need to be talking about more?
I think one of the most these are the things that are around automating certain tasks. And let me just talk about that one particular example.
Mhm.
In any recording of any meetings and transcripts, one of the dangers is you may be recording things that you don't want recorded. So the
True.
discoverability of the issues. So I know some companies where they found out, oh, we actually are using AI already to record meetings and have transcripts. We need to shut that down because what are the implications for that? So I know one company that did exactly that. And the
Mm.
AI person was like, I'm so sorry, everyone. It's really valuable tool. I got canceled because I brought it up as an example that how we're using AI already. And well, we can't have that. So there are lots of data issues. It is going to change the way we see ourselves, how we perceive what is captured. The whole question of data, you need data to make AI work. So what data can we collect and what data can we use or should we use? This is why we need those ethical and responsible and safe guidelines. And you mentioned the US government coming up with the guidelines. No, the government does not move quickly, but that document was really well done. And given where we are in the space where most companies aren't even thinking about it, that document is a tremendously good roadmap for people to follow. And putting together saying, these are behaviors that are good, these are behaviors that are, yeah, maybe iffy, and these are bad behaviors. So it gives you a bit of a roadmap to say what's safe, what isn't, and what may or may not be safe. We have to figure that out. So I look at all these use cases out there, and literally any problem that you have, any activity that you do will probably be better done with some version of generative AI. Not all of it. Some of it may just be kind of like a little bit of additive, but other things are tremendously helpful. I use it as a thought partner, for example, because I deal in the area of thoughts. And so the quality of my thoughts, the research that goes into it, all of it is impacted. I use AI in every aspect of my work, from doing research to summarizing it to me actually putting together outlines, actually mining all of the interviews that I do and finding the connected patterns to that. But it starts with a query and a curiosity from me. The AI could never do the thinking. I have to ask the questions. But then I give it an outline. I go, what else am I missing? What are the things that I'm not talking about? You are this audience. Be that audience. And what questions would you have for me that I'm not addressing here? Help me see the blind spots. And so I'm not asking it to write, but it is increasing so much the quality of my thinking to levels that I could never have imagined before. And the speed at which I can now do thinking and creating content and engagement with people is exponential to where it was a year ago.
Mm. Agreed. We're seeing the same kind of disruption on the software development side as well. GitHub Copilot is probably the most widely known of the tools. And I, as someone who have been writing software for, the better part of 20 years, like I kind of know what I'm doing, not to too, like, I have a general idea of like what it should look like. But as a thought partner, I really like that framing because sometimes I will have to have 5 different pages of documentation all open up on my screen at exactly the same time. I have to figure out what the differences are between those. It is so much more efficient, both for me as well as our clients, for me to spend less time doing some of the just things that could be automated, where it synthesizes all 5 of those documents. I can ask it a question. I'm like, all right, what's the difference between this interface, and this interface? What are the performance implications? What are the security implications? And in this scenario, which one would you recommend that I use? You still have to have some dialogue that goes back and forth. It's nice because it's on demand. You don't have to wait for someone else to log on to, wait for them to get their first cup of coffee flowing. It's a fully 100% caffeinated thought partner. So thank you very much for that framing. I really like that.
Yeah,
So
what I like about it is I can tell the thought partner what kind of partner I want it to be. I can ask it to take on a certain role, have a different perspective, use a certain tone with me. I may be having a bad day, so I'm like, just be encouraging. tell me I'm smart, whatever it is, and it'll show up that way. And I think that, again, from my perspective is that this tool has the ability to make us be superhuman, to do the things that we never ever thought we could do. I can write programs. I can speak in other languages. I can literally, again, write in different languages, like the universal translator from Star Trek. I can even have my voice translate, speaking other differently. I'm literally speaking other languages with my voice. And the possibilities around that for engagement and connection is tremendous. And so I keep thinking that the only thing that's going to stop us is our imagination of how we can use this tool. And the one thing I encourage companies to do is people are probably already using it. So set up a Slack channel, set up some ways for people to collaborate and share these best practices. And one thing that's very important to remember, the prompts that you use inside of your organization are incredibly valuable IP. The way that your people ask questions in the context of the work that they're doing is a repeatable process, and that prompt is extremely important to capture along with the results and to say, how would I improve on that? So treating it like really valuable IP is a really good step. And again, that knowledge that you gain from inside people embodied in those prompts is because that's how we use generative AI is through the prompts. So I have a prompt library that people can use and expand on. Democratize access to generative AI, give people really robust guidelines and rule books on what they can and cannot do, and then allow them to go fast. I heard from a friend, a great analogy. The CEO of Coursera, Jeff Manchin, called it. He said, in order to go fast, like the F1 Formula car drivers, it's not only about the engine, it's about how good your brakes are so that you can brake when you need to. And so having good brakes gives you the confidence to go fast. And most organizations have not figured out how to put those brakes in, what the brakes look like, defined it for the people so that they can go fast.
Going fast and being able to break. That's that's good advice. Before we close, any closing thoughts that you have? Anything else you want to bring up that we haven't talked about? From my notes, we've covered a lot of ground. But I'm curious, anything that kind of just comes top of mind, and anything good thoughts you want to leave people with.
Yeah, I mean, we vacillate between FOMO, fear of missing out, and FOGI, fear of getting in. And so, the inertia that is there right now is overwhelmingly there, more so than FOMO. So just getting over that initial inertia, it feels like a heavy lift, and it doesn't need to be. I like to think about it as play. Like, let's go play with generative AI. Let's see what it can do. Let's explore with it, reduce the stakes, and not take it too seriously. And be aware of the things and the precautions that you have to take, but then just play with it. And that will get you so much further than you sitting on the sidelines and going, well, what does it do? How does it work?
Agreed. Agreed. So where can people go to learn more about you, more about your work? Where would you recommend them? If they want to learn more.
I think a good place to start is my website, charleneli.com. But also, I put most of my current content. I do a live stream every week. I have a LinkedIn newsletter. I also have an email newsletter that's a bit more expansive with all my content. But all my weekly content, all the freshest content appears on LinkedIn. So you can follow me there.
Mhm. And I believe that's how I found you. Through a friend of a friend. So what a small world we live in. It's crazy. So, Charlene, this was great. You gave me a lot of homework. I gotta do some research on, a lot of different ways that I should be thinking about it. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And to everyone watching, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you in the future.